I'm Scott with Work Happier, where we're building better workplaces and happier workforces through the experiences of people. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.
Hey, so I've got an interesting one for you today because on the surface it kind of sounds a lot like a hiring question, but it really exposes a bigger problem with how a lot of companies and recruiters kind of think about the concept of references. And just to be clear, I'm not talking about like normal reference requests. Most people, I think, should have 2 or 3 professional references they can kind of comfortably use when needed. That's a pretty reasonable thing for somebody to expect. I've got people in my life who've called in the past and asked if they can use me as a reference. And I go, yeah, I mean, always, anytime, years down the road, doesn't really matter. The answer is yes. Like I said, that's not really what we're talking about. So here's kind of the situation or the question that I've encountered here. A candidate interviews for a role. The recruiter, things go well. The recruiter asks for 2 references. Candidate provides the references. References are contacted, and then the recruiter has come back and asked the candidate for a specific manager at a very specific company. The candidate is, of course, at this point uncomfortable because they're no longer in contact with this person, and they're obviously they don't feel right just handing out personal information. And honestly, that's a pretty reasonable reaction. I think makes sense to me. And it's not unheard of for somebody to ask, for a specific reference. It happens. It depends, a lot on role and industry and seniority. Sometimes that can be more common, but less so. Pretty weird to happen after 2 references have been requested. They've been completed, the checks, and now we're asking for a specific person. It kind of changes the dynamic, and at that point, you kind of start wondering what are they looking for? What are they what are they trying to get out of this? What problem are they thinking they're solving? And so to answer the initial question very quickly, from a practical standpoint, if you really want the job, you attempt to reconnect, because the fact that you're not in contact, it doesn't really matter unless you literally can't find them, right? But I do agree, you never want to hand out somebody's personal information without talking to them first. Certainly not. But this is where I think recruiters and hiring teams tend to kind of lose touch with reality sometimes. So listen up. This is for recruiters and HR professionals at this point. Like, this is for you. References, not free. They cost candidates, they cost people social and professional capital. Because from a company standpoint, you can't treat it, often they do. They treat it like it's paperwork or just another PDF that we can send, right? A checkbox. But, from a candidate standpoint, we're having to reconnect with people, you're asking for a favor. Sometimes you're reopening a relationship that hasn't, been fostered at all recently. You're spending reputation capital for sure, and you're asking somebody to attach their credibility to you. But I think oftentimes companies think you can just pull a reference, open the fridge and just take one out. And this has happened to me, by the way. I was requested to provide 2 very specific resources, references. Neither one of them worked at the company anymore. One of them, I didn't even have one of her contact information. I had to literally had to reach out and ask her brother to have her give me a call. And that's wasn't a small ask. That's what happens, right? It's social leverage, and you're kind of cashing in at least a little bit of relationship chips. After that, they never even contacted my references. In fact, they ghosted me, but that's a totally different story. And it's not what bothered me anyways. What bothered me was the fact that they asked me to, track down these highly specific people within an interview process. I had to cash in favors, social capital, as I said, and then they didn't even bother using the information. The company risks nothing, and meanwhile, the candidate has to spend these, time, emotional energy, and that kind of stuff, professional leverage. So if you're sitting there, right, and you're uncomfortable about this kind of request, I think that's pretty rational. And the problem isn't that you're difficult. The problem is that a lot of systems just don't understand, or they completely underestimate what it is that they're asking for. So back to kind of the situation specifically, there's really two paths you can take, right? Path one, like I kind of touched on earlier, if you need the job, you want the job badly enough, it's not, too big of a deal. You try to reconnect from a professional standpoint. You ask them, will you be a reference? And then you provide the professional contact info. The other path would be, if that can't happen, you can't do these things. So then you're going to have a conversation, direct conversation with the recruiter or the hiring manager, whoever you're in contact with, something along the lines of like, this person just isn't available. Happy to provide another reference, or some other, way to verify whatever it is that you're looking for. And maybe you even get some information out of that too. But, the key is you have to have a direct conversation. Don't, no emails or anything like that. And in closing, I think obviously the part that companies need to understand is that when you're asking somebody for a specific reference, especially after references have already been completed, checked, you're asking somebody to spend potentially a lot of accumulated professional goodwill just for your process. So if you're going to make that ask, treat it like it matters, right? Because it does. Thanks for watching. Any questions, comments? You want to work together on a problem? My info's in the description. And, please don't forget, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Have a good one. Remember, it's all about the people. Thank you.